Before we jump into today's episode, I'm so excited to be able to tell you that my debut book, Optimal You, Supercharge Your Energy, Strengthen Your Immunity, will be published on the 19th of November, with the Kindle edition available on the 18th for 99p for one day only, so set an alert in your diary. Optimal You is a groundbreaking guide uncovering the 8 pillars of health for supercharged energy and strengthened immunity to optimize your health and extend your health span. Delve into evidence-based strategies to optimize nutrition, balance your lifestyle, reduce toxin exposure, and address root causes of health imbalances. There's a 14-step anti-inflammatory nutrition blueprint included in the book to supercharge your mitochondria and fortify your immune system. Plus, my 4 lifestyle S's, sleep, stress, strength, and social, that form the foundation of optimal well-being. The book will help you to empower yourself with practical tools and insights to embark on a transformative journey towards the optimal version of you. You can pre-order your copy or read what people are saying about the book at optimalyoubook.com. Now let's head to today's episode. Welcome to the Good Health Podcast. I'm your host, Nicole Good, a certified functional medicine practitioner, registered nutritionist, and author. In this podcast, we delve into the world of energy and immune health and wellness with positivity, from optimal health and energy to stress and burnout, right through to immune conditions such as thyroid and autoimmune disease. We deep dive into functional medicine, nutritional medicine, and lifestyle medicine, as well as the personal stories of our amazing guests, from Olympians to famous faces and guest experts from all different parts of the health and wellness world. It's time to stop letting your health hold you back and become the optimal version of you. Don't forget to come and join the conversation on Instagram at good_health, that's GOODE, or visit the website nicolegoodhealth.com to find out more. Welcome to today's episode of the Good Health Podcast. I'm your host, Nicole Good, and today we've got special guest Karly Arber on the episode. We're going to be digging into burnout, chronic illness, female entrepreneurship, and really importantly, building a life of purpose. Karly Arber is a business mentor, she's a visionary leader, and she's a force in the entrepreneurial world. She's celebrated for helping women to build deeply fulfilling, freedom-giving lives. Her work is recognized by global corporations like Google and Women of Silicon Valley, and she is reshaping the landscape for female founders, helping them to transcend limits and stand out as industry leaders. Karly's journey is an interesting one. From investment banking to the founder of 3 companies, is a testament to her strategic vision, her resilience, and unwavering commitment to her purpose. Having overcome significant personal adversity that we're going to dig into in this episode, burnout and chronic illness, all of which Karly's very open about, she has reinvented her path to create a life of profound impact. She now leads a powerful movement to elevate women in business, shaping a generation of purpose-driven entrepreneurs who are redefining success on their own terms. Before we jump into this episode, I just want to let you know that we do discuss domestic violence in this episode. So if that's something that you don't want to listen to, then you may not want to carry on listening to this episode. But I hope that you do find it really useful, and it is a very inspiring and uplifting story. Welcome, Karly. It's really great to have you on the Good Health Podcast today. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. I am very excited to be here and to have this conversation and to bring it to your audience.
Yeah, so there's a lot of areas that we can delve into. We've just had a quick chat before we sort of started recording this, and I think there's so much where we kind of cross over in experiences that we've had, which led me to my work and led you to your work. So let's jump straight in. Let's go back to the beginning. I talk a lot about the spectrum of immune health that I work on, and that leading from having stressors, traumas in life, leading to people maybe sort of getting some niggling symptoms, which maybe leads to sort of burnout and going on into chronic illness stage of things. And you've really been right down that whole spectrum, which many people have that I speak to. I have myself. It's a journey that I think we're both really familiar with. So let's go back, because what I love about your story is how you've changed your life as well. You were in a whole other world, and you've really flipped that on its head and built something that really works for you, works for your health. And I think we should go back to the beginning and work our way through really your story, because I think it's a really interesting one, and I think it's one that's really going to relate with a lot of the listeners. I know that you had a lot of stress going on in your life a long time ago. So can you tell us a little bit about that and what came from that for you?
My goodness, my life has radically changed, even in the last year, the last 2 years. But if I go all the way back, I am not just a different person internally, but my whole entire external life, my business, the way that I live my life is completely different. And the biggest thing for me has been, I have always been incredibly ambitious. So I have always had these big visions, these big dreams, and really saw myself. I can even remember when I was young, wanting to have my own business and run my own business. And when I got into the corporate world, so my background is in investment banking, I just found my feet there. It was just a space for me where I was just like, this is the environment for me to just where I felt at home, like business and just in that thriving environment. But climbing the corporate ladder, I working in investment banking, very high stress, trading floors, very masculine dominated arena as such, came with a lot of stress. And for me, I have always been somebody that I do love working, but I hadn't really found and didn't understand what working in alignment meant, what purpose meant. And for me, I kind of got used to an environment or thought that the norm was that you had to, hustle, you had to work really long hours, that you had to fight for money and, trade time for money, fight for promotions, and that the harder that you worked, the more money you would get and the more achievements you would have. And that's something that was what I was accustomed to. That is all that I knew. And in that environment, it started off with, the usual working late, the working evenings, then eating your lunch at your desk and, doing more, a never ending to-do list.
And that lifestyle is, I think, something that so many of us relate to and have experienced. And it's so damaging to our health, but I don't think we necessarily realize it at the time.
Yeah, it's these little trade-offs that I remember even back then. I thought, oh, what is one day just having lunch at my desk?
Yeah.
Oh, what is it if it just one day I work an extra 2 hours just to clear my to-do list? Or what is it if I say yes to this because they need support and I put them before my own needs? So it's those little yeses or those little things where you put someone else's needs before yours or you waver on your priorities.
You said that you were in a very male dominated world. I think that's something as well that women are more guilty of doing. I think, women, I've certainly noticed this so I have the immune clinic and I have the optimal health clinic, and the immune clinic is 75% women. And this is the people who have got chronic illness, really got burnout, got chronic fatigue, whatever it might be. And the optimal health clinic is the people who are reaching out earlier, who are maybe stressed and starting to noticing those signs and don't want to let themselves get to that point. And that clinic is 75% men. It's so interesting. And it's not that women are not having that problem. I just think we're really bad, and it is bad. We really shouldn't do it, but we're really bad for putting ourselves last, I think.
Yeah. And I love this point so much. And it's so interesting because actually my role within the investment banking world was global business manager. So not only did I get to cross over with many different teams and departments inside of the business, but work with a number of different levels. And so even when you look at all the way from C-suite all the way down to, interns and juniors coming in across the board, it would be that men always had very strong boundaries. They would say no, and they wouldn't care about saying no. Whereas as women, for me personally, I felt that my work wouldn't be deemed good enough if I didn't do more, or I would be looked at differently, or I'm not going to get the promotion, or, I wouldn't be seen as the leader if I'm not doing, or if I'm not saying yes and taking on more, or if I have a strict boundary. And something that was really interesting to me was that, and there's statistics around this, around men will always go for on a CV. If they can only do 10% of what's on a CV not a CV, like a job description, if their CV only relates to 10%, they're still going for it and they're still pitching themselves for it. Whereas women will wait until they can do 90% until they're pitching themselves to it. And the same applies in the corporate world for me. And with my experiences, asking for the pay rise, there's something about, especially being in a male environment where there are big characters and I saw it as a disadvantage for me to be in my feminine and for me to be in my, which is my core essence, and to use that as my superpower. I felt like I had to compete in the way that men do. And that led me to being out of alignment, out of sync, and going down a route which led to burnout and the other health issues that I had, is because I put myself in that environment instead of utilizing my own superpowers.
Yeah. I've got a part of the book where I've got these things through the book called pearls, which are like little nuggets of information that are just like these facts or, you know, whatever they might be. And one of them is no is a complete sentence.
Mm.
And I remember the first time somebody said that to me, and I was like, yeah, it is. If you know, grammatically, you can write no and put a full stop after it, and that is it. And I think it's something where we are really bad at, particularly like you said, as women, particularly bad at it. We feel we've got to make excuses, and especially for you when you're in that sort of male-dominated world as well, there is a lifestyle that comes with that male-dominated world. And I assume in investment banking, there was a lot of entertaining after hours of work as well. As a society, I think we have celebrated pushing ourselves and almost being exhausted as like it's a badge of honor to be, you know, we're working so hard that we're that tired. And those hours after work where we're entertaining or you're doing things like that are not classed as work anymore. They are classed as something that you should do outside of work, but actually that's your time and it is work. Entertaining is still work, and you're still, from a health perspective, you are still switched on. You know, your brain is still in work mode, your body is still in work mode, and you're not getting that downtime. And we've got to normalize actually going slower is okay. Having downtime is okay. Not being busy all the time is okay. And I think as women, particularly, like you said, we're not very good at that.
Yeah. And it's like this slowing down to speed up. And I wish that I knew this. I really wish that I knew this back then. I love health and fitness so much. I don't drink alcohol. You know, I used to back when, ultra party lifestyle, out all the time. And as I've really grown and evolved and prioritized health, that just doesn't align with me anymore. And so the conflict that I always had was, yes, all of the men within the investment banking world would be out after work, socializing, drinking. And that wasn't me, because I'd rather be at the gym or spending time with my family and doing the things that light me up. Whereas the conflict was that, okay, they're the ones now getting the promotions because they're seen and they're client facing. And so it becomes less around whether you are just good at your job. You know, you can be amazing at your job, but there is a game to play within the corporate world. And I just got to a point where I didn't want to play it anymore. And in terms of, you know, the thing that I know now that I wish that I'd known back then is play your own game. Like, never play somebody else's game. You create your own playing field, utilize your own strengths. So for me back then, my own strengths are things that I didn't really strengthen and utilize in that environment, because I was trying to compete against all the men in that environment, which led down this path of stress and health issues and burning out. Whereas the things, if I'd really utilized my own strengths, like good communication, relationship building, like networking, all of these things really to my advantage, that would have given me what I needed and got me further in my own way that actually is in alignment with me.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit more about the health side of things. What happened for you? What did that perfect storm? It's never one thing, but what did that perfect storm of things look like for you?
So 2018 to 2019 was the catalyst of my life radically changing. So during this time, the lead up to this point, I was full-time job in the corporate world, some days working 16-hour days, you know, entertaining of an evening, working at weekends. But on the side, I've always been somebody that I knew one day I was always going to have my own business, and I was willing to do whatever it takes. So I'm now at a point where I have exited a number of them, but 4 businesses, and 3 of those were on the side of working in investment banking. And so I really, when you talk about, you know, wearing the Badge of Honor as like superwoman, I really did wear that with pride at the time, thinking that, yeah, I can do all the things. And so my life was already at this high stress point. I was already, at the tipping point, just about keeping my head above water with running my businesses on the side and, trying to grow an online business so that at one point I could transition while still trying to climb the corporate ladder and do all of the things and live a life, is
Yeah.
you get to that point. So you can imagine what my life and stress point was at that time. And then 2018, tipping over to 2019, was when my entire world came crashing down. So I had been in an abusive relationship for 3.5 years. And this relationship was something that when I look back now, I just didn't have the capacity to deal with leaving. And so I knew within 2 months of getting into this relationship that it wasn't the right one. And I stayed in it for a number of reasons. But a core factor of that was I just didn't have the capacity to handle anything else and to deal with that. And so for me, I stayed in that situation far longer than what I should. And I finally built up the courage over time to leave for the last time. So I had left a number of times throughout this period, but, I had so much other things going on there. It was just easier to stay. He was talking about marriage, he was talking about a future, and that shook me to my core that my future vision of how I want to live my life, like this man is not in that. He does not play a role in that. I need to get out now. Like I need to get out. And so I left for the final and last time after multiple police interventions. And that final last time was the hardest decision that I ever had to make. And it didn't come easy. So going through a very traumatic time, there was stalking, there was harassing. I had to completely change locations so that he couldn't find me anymore. My whole entire life got flipped upside down the moment that I decided to leave. And that really did knock me and add a lot of health issues that I think had been bubbling up underneath that I'd just been, suppressing, keeping them down.
It's like everything releases, all those emotions, all that stored stress that you've had, sort of everything. You make that decision to make that change and everything. And that is a hugely brave decision as well, to walk out of something like that. I'm sure there'll be people out there listening to this that find that incredibly inspiring, that you did manage to make that move and to get out of that. But like you say, it's you make that decision and you already had a lot of other stress. That one thing is a hugely stressful situation to be in. You also had the work and the hours and all of the other things that were going on, building a business, and all of that stress kind of when you make a decision, I think, to change your life in such a huge way, because the release of all the emotions of it, the stress of it all comes out after the event.
And something that I really learned about myself was I can just push through, and I will push through and push through and push through until I got to a point of where something like that would trigger and it would just knock me down. And so with that, a couple of months later, just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, a close friend of mine passed away very abruptly, very suddenly. And just when I thought life couldn't get any worse, and when I thought I was at a rock bottom, life just presented me a whole new deeper rock bottom, whereby it really shifted every single thing I thought I knew about myself, but also life as I saw it, because it became less about me and what I had experienced and going through to really navigate grief and loss on top of that. And to experience these things in such a short space of time, like these are huge life things and emotions and feelings that people have to deal with, throughout your whole lifetime of grief and loss, and hopefully not trauma to that extent within the space of, it was a 6-month period.
Gosh, that's such a small period as well to have all of that. Obviously, you'd been in this sort of stressful work environment, had that sort of life where you were running on empty. When you're running on empty, to then come up against all of these stresses at the same time, you don't have that resilience in you. You haven't got that resilience. That's a bad thing. You need that resilience in life, because there will be stressful events that come up. But if you want to look on the positive side of it, something like this that you experienced has really altered the course of your life. It's altered who you are. It's altered what you do, how you live your life. It's allowed you to build the life that you want. And I think it's really important as well that we take those positives from things, because yes, you were at rock bottom, but what you've done so brilliantly with being at rock bottom is turn that into something very positive and build a life that is the right life for you now.
And I love this because in those moments of where I felt so completely broken, that I also felt so liberated and free.
Yeah.
Actually, everything that I thought I wanted that wasn't serving me anymore crumbled away in that moment for me to rebuild really new, stronger foundations in a way by which actually served me and pour into me. And it was this pivotal moment that, as much as 2018 to 2019 was really the time period that broke me, it was also that rising moment of, that's where I discovered a strength and a resilience that I never knew that I had.
Yeah.
This part of me that just was, in that moment, something shifted within me that really did shift the way that I lead myself, the way that I navigate life, and what actually is important to me. And it was almost as in that short space, I had such a revelation that not only did everything crumble, but it was like this new pathway and light was shining to, this is where your future's going now. During that period, over the course of the next couple of years, really on this long, arduous healing journey, it was really about me, because I was bedbound, diagnosed with chronic fatigue.
When did that come into the picture?
I mean, long before I was officially diagnosed, I just knew something wasn't right, because I would get substantial amount of sleep. All I was doing was sleeping. And I was sleeping and not waking up feeling refreshed. And it was like this dark cloud following me around.
Was this after everything had happened and you'd had this rock bottom moment? Did this chronic fatigue and the sleeping, did that come in after that point?
Yeah. So I really started to make radical changes within my life. As much as this was a short space of time, the healing journey was about 3 years.
Yeah.
So 2019, following towards the end of the year, I just couldn't shift, having no energy and still feeling so low. And I was doing all of the things that I had been taught to do.
Yeah.
I'm working less, I'm taking more time for myself, I'm going to the gym, I'm doing all these things. And what I thought was actually going to shift wasn't shifting it. And it wasn't until I ended up bedbound, completely like not able to do anything, then I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue, that I realized that actually my perception of what health actually goes far deeper than just the foods that you eat and getting enough sleep, which I had just been taught, and that was what I thought. And so that for me was really eye-opening, that actually it goes much deeper than that. That was really the start of a whole new health journey for me, to really understanding my lifestyle and being able to build strong foundations in a way that really support me uniquely to myself.
So over that time, what were the things that really had an impact on you and became important to you?
Yeah, I think that the number one thing for me out of everything was the people that I surround myself with.
Yes.
It's so important. And I really evaluated friendships. I shifted friendship groups. When I say I radically changed my life, like there was no stone left unturned. Like every single inch of my life was looked at. I was stuck on this hamster wheel, going day by day by day, which I think a lot of people do. And a lot of people will relate to this, where you are just living life through a to-do list, through a schedule. And for me, really getting to the point of where I was bedbound, and I pressed pause on my entire life and took that step back. And as we were saying earlier, to slow down, to speed up, that was really what I did during that time. And I looked at every inch of my life. And during that moment, I was really looking at what serves me and what isn't going to serve me moving forward. So everything that I had done to get to this point, for me to radically change and create the life that I'd always dreamed of, that I always wanted, that really aligns with my big vision of what I know that I truly always was going to get and truly deserve. But I had to take, real ownership of that, of my life, and take control of my own circumstances, not be a victim of my circumstance, but decide that actually this is what I want, and I can go out and create it, but it starts with me. Nobody else is going to give this to me.
And I think that's a really difficult thing to do as well, because you talked about that hamster wheel, which is, I think a lot of us, a huge proportion of us are guilty of that. I know it happened to me where I was on that treadmill and going down that path. And it's really difficult to step off that. It's, we sort of say like, oh, we're talking about it now and sort of saying like, oh, step off that, that hamster wheel and just take a step back. And it's a really difficult thing to do. It's a very brave thing to do as well, I think, because for some people, like you, that was literally changing your whole life, was stepping off that wheel. And you're stepping into the unknown, aren't you? The hamster wheel, sometimes I think it feels safe. You know what's coming, even if it's not quite what you want. But to actually take that leap of faith and step outside of that and say, no, this is not what I want, I'm going to do something different. You're then stepping into the zone that you want to be in, but you're in the unknown because you don't know what's coming next. And I see this a lot even with people that are moving into like working in nutrition and working in functional medicine. They're usually in previous jobs, prior, like exactly as you were, in a previous job. And to step away from that and say, actually, I've trained in that, but I'm going to just give that up now. And I'm going to put everything into this life that I want. It's a really difficult decision for some people to make and take that leap of faith. And it is really tricky. It's not something that we're saying is easy. It's a difficult maneuver. How did you navigate that? You hit rock bottom and it became I'm doing this to save myself, to get myself on the right track. Do you think hitting rock bottom helped you to do that? Do you think you'd have done it anyway?
I think I would have done it anyway, because for me, I always knew I deserved better. So even in that relationship, I knew I deserved better. I just didn't move on it when I should have. You hold faith that it is always going to happen, but you can control your life. So you can make things shift and move accordingly without it getting to the rock bottoms, without it getting to the burnout, without it getting to the end of the spectrum. It isn't saying that it's easy at all. It was, a lot of the things that I have done have been the hardest, the most difficult, challenging experiences. And they have so much fear held to them. But, I'm not fearless. I'm fearless in a sense that like, I'm okay to take risk. I take big risks and I can navigate uncertainty now. But that comes with building up that muscle to be able to learn how to do that. But there's not one person in the world that will not feel fear. There's not one person in the world that will not feel that uncertainty arise. It's just what level of which you feel it and whether you allow it to stop you or whether you move through it. And something for me that has really helped is, as a woman, our superpower that so many women forget and aren't tapped into and connected to is intuition. And for me, when I really tapped into my inner knowing, where I just intuitively always knew this was the next path for me, my logical brain would kick in and be like, no, that feels scary. Don't do that. Or, this could happen. Or how are you going to make money? Or what is your life going to look like? And, I come from a very analytical, logical background. So
yeah, I'm the same. Yeah.
And I know so many people relate to this. Like I haven't always been in tune with my body, hence why I led to burnout, hence why, I didn't read the signs. I didn't know the signs. So that is something that I've really cultivated and learned and developed and mastered. But now the way that I truly, truly know whether a decision is right or not is because I'm tapped in and connected to my intuition. I mean, if I think of, my next step in life, even when it feels scary, if I intuitively know in myself, this is what I'm meant to be doing, I know it will work out. I don't need to know the how. I don't need to know how I'm going to get there. I just need to know it's okay to take the leap of faith and you stay strong in your beliefs and it will work out. As long as you take the steps, it will work out. We all know when we are tapped in whether something's right or wrong. We're just not listening to our own bodies. And so for me, it was that disconnect where I always already knew, especially as a woman, because intuition as a woman, that connection that you have, that is your superpower. You don't need to know the strategy, the logistics, the business plan. You don't need to know the how. You just need to know that feeling of where you are being guided, and that will guide you. And that's already telling you.
Yeah. And I think that is a really important lesson and a really important message for people. I think also something that a lot of people listening to this will struggle with. It's like we say, listen to your gut, isn't it? It's that gut feeling is always there. But how often do we actually listen to it?
Mm.
Probably, if on balance, probably not that much, certainly not as much as we should be doing. But that gut feeling and the whole thing around the whole gut feeling thing really, really fascinates me, because we know that there's that direct link from the gut to the brain. And, let's say you're walking into a big job interview or something like that, and you get stressed. Sometimes that stress is going to come out as, butterflies in the stomach, or, an upset stomach, or whatever it might be. The emotion of it comes out in the gut. And our gut is hugely linked to our brain. And I'm fascinated by that, the whole link around that, the physical and the emotional as well. But that gut feeling is something that is so powerful that we should really, and it is that intuition, it's something that we know inside of us. And it's really important that we do hear that. And in the same way with health is, listening to our bodies. If you could take yourself as you are now back to that point where you were working in, the investment banking, and you would know that you were on the path to burnout, you would know that you were exhausting your body. I think you even know at the time we're just not listening to those messages. And listening to those messages from our body is super important from both perspectives, from keeping us on the right track, from making the right decisions for us in life, and for keeping your health on track as well. Listening to those internal messages is so important.
And I mean, even when you was talking there about me going back, I am unrecognizable. Looks wise, burnout and high stress has such an impact on just how you physically look, as well as it just impacted every area of my life. And the reason why I've been able to really fine tune this inner knowing and leading myself in a way much more powerfully that actually serves me is because I have non-negotiables that I never used to have. And so my non-negotiables now around how I'm able to run the business that I run, do all of the things, because, a lot of the things that people say to me is like, how do you do all the things and still optimize your health? Because, I'm in the gym, I'm into biohacking, this is the fittest and the healthiest and the most youthful and energized I've ever been in my entire life. And bearing in mind, I have played sports since a very young age. I've always been very sporty, always played netball, always loved the gym, but there's a difference now. And the difference now is that I take time and I move at a slower pace, but I get further because of that. And a lot of people don't understand that concept. They're like, how do you move slower, but still get further ahead? And it's because when you move slower and you actually pay attention to how your body feels, what you're doing, and you're picking up and observing how not just you feel, but your environment that you're in, the work that you're doing, how that's making you feel. Is it in alignment? Is it serving you? So that slowing down is actually giving you the knowledge and the wisdom and the tools that you need to speed up. And so that concept, I just want to share that because people don't understand that as much. So it's like, if you're on this hamster wheel, when you actually get off, you can still work and do the work that you love. You just do it from an elevated space of where you put in time in your diary. Like, so now my diary has never been as empty, but it is so intentional with what I do. And I'm doing things that serve me, that are in alignment. I do things that calm my nervous system, coming from a very high stressful space. My priority is my health. So instead of having a business and then fitting my life around that business, I have my life and my business weaves through my life. That has just given me such an enriched life and tipped how I do business on its head. I actually do a lot more than what I did back then, but I'm energized by the work that I do.
Yeah. I saw a visual representation of exactly what you've just said. I think it was on Instagram, or it was on socials, I think. And they had a ball going down a track. One of the tracks was just a straight slope, and the ball was just going from start to finish, and it was just hurtling sort of down the track. And then they had the second one, they had a ball, and it was slowly sort of going a bit uphill, and then it would go downhill at a faster pace. And then it would have time where it was going a bit slow and it would go uphill. Downhill would be very fast because it's got the momentum. And the ball that got to the end of the track first was the one that was going up and down, that was having slow moments and fast moments, not the one that, looking at it, you would be like, well, that, the straight down the slope, that's the one that's going to get there fastest. And it wasn't. It was the one that took times of slower movement and then times of faster movement, because the faster movement was faster than the other one could go, because it had that momentum, that build up, that slower time. And it was a visual representation sort of exactly of what you're talking about, of that if we have that slower periods of time, we can slow down, we can have that time to speed up, to have those moments where actually we'll go faster than we ever thought possible. It was really fascinating watching it.
And it's something that is what I didn't know before.
Yeah.
That concept of how I live my life now is, this is where you said before around, was it the rock bottom moment? Does someone have to go through a rock bottom moment to radically change their life? No. When you slow down, you make small tweaks that over time, they're building momentum as you move. Unfortunately for me, it took the rock bottom moment for me to learn everything that I had and for that to flip. But actually, what is more sustainable in life and business is the fact that when in those moments of slowing down, you're fine tuning, you're tweaking little things. So it doesn't have to be a big radical change in that moment, but that small tweak to, maybe you look at your schedule and you look at, actually, if I move a couple of meetings here, or if I take a Friday afternoon where I don't have calls, like these little things, these small tweaks during these slower periods, or, the way in which you work, the friendships that you have, the conversations that you have, like, are people pouring into you or are they draining your energy? Like, this small fine tuning is all you have to do, because it's the small tweaks that actually yield the biggest results without you even noticing. It just happens very effortlessly, very gracefully. And that is just such a more elevated way of transforming and developing. And, when we talk about transforming your life, like, it doesn't have to be this big whole overhaul, because for me personally, I would never have stuck to anything if all of a sudden I cut out and changed absolutely everything. Just being able to do that in a really subtle way and making sure that, testing it, seeing if this works and building upon it. It's just a much beautiful way that really would serve people better if they just knew that actually that is possible as well.
Yeah. And I think when we slow down as well and we take those moments, and it might be that the first step is just to slow down, take a period where you're just going to say, I'm just going, even if it's a day, have a day where you're just going to slow down. And I think it's when you take that time and you slow down, that's when you actually listen to yourself. You hit that intuition, that, that gut instinct, that intuition, those things we've talked about. It's when you slow down that you hear those more. Even if the first step is just to say, I'm going to take a day and I'm literally not planning, not going to do anything. You're just going to take a day to really listen to your body and listen to that intuition and figure out what things are going to be. Just little steps like that, things start to come to you and you start to see a different path and different route and different options that are available to you. But I don't think that comes when we're in that super stressed, super busy state of play where, we just can't hear ourselves think.
And for me, I didn't know any different. And so when I was in this high stress state, that was what my reality was. That was what my environment was. I didn't know that there was a different way of operating, a different way of doing business. The life that I have now, I never thought in my wildest dreams that you could actually do business in this way and live a very enriched life and make great money working with clients that you love working with, and, having time to invest in yourself, prioritize your health. And I didn't know that that was a possibility. I would see people doing it online, but because I was so in my own environment, I didn't see how I could get out of there, because I knew that it would be the radical changes, the complete change of jobs and all of these things, which is big life changes. But it is in these small tweaks that actually you then start seeing a better way of life. And you're like, oh, this feels good. Yeah, I want more of this. And then you start having more peace in your life. And, my nervous system started calming down. I was like, oh, I actually like doing business when I feel calm and I'm not stressed to deadlines and, hustling and being pushed. And so it's like, oh, I want more of this. So it's just finding what works for you, because everybody has different aspirations and different ambitions and wants a different lifestyle. And it's really fine tuning your own lifestyle, but doing more of just what feels good for you. Even if it takes you 5 or 10 years, it doesn't matter. Like, timelines do not matter. It's as long as you are constantly evolving and growing and moving towards that end vision that you hold, you will get there at some point. The same way that even when I was, in investment banking, I always knew that I would have the life that I have now. But, it's taken me over a decade to get it. Twists and turns and ups and downs and lessons and learnings and wins and, then setbacks again. But I'm not even anywhere near where I'm going to be in another 10 years time, another decade or two time. And so it really is just committing to that journey and that path. But for me, it's always been health is just the number one. Healthy relationships, prioritizing that. And, something that I do is I have just realized that for me, I understood how my own body operates and really leaning into that. So really taking this unique approach to, we see a lot on social media, or we see a lot where other people are living a certain way that works for them, whether it's diets, whether it's types of workouts and things like that. And for me, it was HIIT workouts don't work for me anymore, but I absolutely love strength training. So how do I do that in a way that works for me? Or, certain diets. And it's really about curating your own lifestyle that works for you, that gives you the most fulfilling and enriched life. And at the core of that for me has always been, yes, health, but also purpose. So the minute I realized my purpose and discovered that and leaned into that, everything else just fell into place.
Yeah, super. I talk about that in my book that's coming out. Obviously, obviously the vast majority of it is about health and about that sort of nutrition and all those lifestyle pieces. But we touch on all those other things that come into that lifestyle part of the journey, such as relationships, such as purpose, and how finding those things is really important to keeping yourself in optimal health. And it's way more, and functional medicine is all about this. It's way more than just eating some more veg or doing a bit, eating a certain way or, or just exercising. It's about pulling that whole picture together. And building the life really is part that you want is really part of that optimal health picture. Being able to live the life that you want to live. I very much had this because I had my own, obviously, health struggles. That's why I got into doing what I do. I've got autoimmunity. And for me, building my own business meant that I always knew from the very beginning that building my own business meant that I was going to be able to build something around my health and around how I need to work, because I went through a period where I couldn't work at all. I wasn't well enough. So for me, from day one, it was very much, I've got to build something that works for me, that is the hours that works for me, that is around how my health is. Actually, as it stands, I work far more hours than I thought I ever would be able to, because my health is now a lot better than it was. But I don't do clinic on a Friday. And I did when I first started. I started doing clinic, but I have all the clinic plans to draw up after I've had an appointment. And then I found that was tipping over into Saturday. So I would then be doing client plans on a Saturday, and I actually was only getting one day at the weekend. And I was like, this isn't why I went into business. So I don't do clinic appointments on a Friday now. So that I've always got all my client plans. I can always get them done by the end of the week, and the weekend is mine. And that was really important for me, because that downtime is a huge part of what helped me get better. And I don't want to go down that path of burning out again. So that's my protected time, and I want to keep it that way. And that's just a small tweak, even though I knew I wanted to build a business around my health. That's why I went into doing what I do. And it's why I wanted to build my own business. I still had to consciously think about things, even as I got into the business, that sort of Friday, people would ask for a Friday and I'd be like, yeah, okay, let's do that. And those things creep in almost without you realizing. And I had that intention in my head that I didn't want to build that. I wanted to build it a certain way, but it still sort of crept in. And some of those things came in, and I still had to actively then listen to myself and take that conscious decision to say, no, I'm not going to do this anymore. This is not what I want to build. So as much knowledge as we have, we still have to listen. And the only time that we sort of listen to ourselves and do it is when we actually slow down and step back sometimes. And it was when I was starting to feel really tired with this business
that I said, no, hold on, that something has started to go a bit wrong. It's not quite going down the path I wanted. I stepped back, and it was just a few simple, I'm still working as much as I want to work. I'm seeing more clients now than I was back then. I'm making more than I was back then. I'm helping more people than I was back then, but I'm doing it in a much more intentional way in the hours that I want to do it in. And I've got that Friday is protected, and I don't sway from that. I don't do clinic on a Friday, and that's it. And I think as much as we know and as much knowledge as we have, even for health professionals, like myself, I'm doing this every day. I'm telling people all this stuff every day. I'm telling them to make these decisions, to make these small changes. Even with all of that, you still have to actively step back sometimes and look at your own life and what's going on to be able to see where you need to make those changes.
And it's the intentionality, exactly how you said, the intentionality behind it, because I think everybody will relate to this, as will I, in terms of, it doesn't mean that the business that I've built now is perfect. What it means is that I have never been in a situation whereby, especially right now in my business, whereby I've had to say no and have the strongest boundaries. The more that business grows, and especially as, take on more clients, and I know that you and so many people will relate to this, that as your business grows, you actually have to say no more, have stronger boundaries, and really evaluate your own energy and your own time. And for me, as somebody who, I'm so fired up in my purpose, I absolutely love my business. So for me, I would just want to work, but I know that doesn't align with me. So
I'm exactly the same. Yeah.
I love my clients. I love the work that I do. And so I could just be in it 24/7. But what I've really learned is that I operate my best when I am my best. And so I could work 24/7, but that's not going to be my best work. I know that if I have these breaks and if I schedule my life in a certain way, then I can actually take forward my mission further. I can actually live in my purpose even more. I can build my business even better. And so sometimes I really do have to force myself that lean back here. But what it means is that when I get to my desk or when I'm working, I just collapse time in my business because I'm so switched on and fired up and energized that I can just do 10 tasks within an hour that would have taken me, 4 hours to do.
Yeah, I totally relate to that. Particularly with writing the book, this really came into play, that because it's such a huge project. There were times when and there are deadlines with it, obviously, which I don't generally have deadlines in my business in terms of clinic, or not strict deadlines, but obviously there are with the book. So it's a whole other thing. And even with the deadlines, there were times where I had to actively say to myself, just, you're going to put that down now. I'm going to walk away from it. I'm not going to think about it. I'm not going to look at it. Like that draft manuscript that needed finishing, it was sat there and I was like, I am going to leave it and I'm going to walk away from it. Because you get to that point where I knew I was sat there mulling over it, staring at a blank page, it was slow progress. Whereas I knew if I walked away, I had the break from it, all these ideas started coming to me. I then went and, sat back down. I think, it happened a few times. I went and sat back down where it would be like, a week or maybe 2 weeks later, and I would pick it up again. And then it would just all sort itself out. Everything that I felt stuck on, whether it was trying to figure out what the structure or, whatever it might have been, it all started to flow. The writing started to flow. The structure all came to me. And it was like that work that was taking me hours and hours of sat there and really getting frustrated with it suddenly became a joy to do. And I was doing it really quick. I was getting everything done. I was like, this is brilliant. I'm really happy with it. And that's the stuff that's now gone into the book. But I think when you have projects like that, that really shows that need sometimes for stepping out and stepping back. Everybody gets the best version of you. I say this a lot to my patients, particularly the women where they've got, husbands, children, parents, all the sort of family situation going on, as well as maybe working and everything else. And I would say to them, but if you look after yourself first and you're the best version of you, your children are going to get the best version of you. You're going to be able to go home from work and play with your kids and enjoy that time with them. If you go home from work and you're shattered and you're a bit irritable and you're going to shout at them a bit more. You're going to be a bit more short-tempered. It's going to be harder. You're not going to enjoy the time with them. And actually putting yourself first is putting your family first.
Mm-hmm. And I used to think success was earning great money, materialistic things. Like, I admit, I hold my hand up to that there was once a time that when I thought of my big vision, it was like the watches, the houses, the cars, like, or the luxury holidays. And don't get me wrong, I love a luxury holiday and I love traveling. But for me, success now is spending my days how I wish, doing what I love with the people that I love, really making core memories and having experiences that make my life enriched. And so for me, it is around living life like that. And I think that is the pinnacle point whereby, and I speak to clients about this all the time, where they make incredible money, and then they hit their goal and they're like, I'm making this amount of money. It's great, but there's still something missing. Yeah, the thing that's missing is that you're not living your life. You're not truly living in your purpose. You don't feel fulfilled. You don't feel energized. And you're not spending the quality time doing the things that you love because you're working so much. And the money's great, but if everything else doesn't support that, and if the foundations aren't there, then the money's never worth it. And that's something that took me a long, long time to realize. But when I finally realized that, it's like the switch flipped, and it just opened up a whole new experience to what life actually is for me. And I know that when clients flip that switch as well, it just shifts everything.
I love that. I think I could talk to you all day because I just think there's so much that we could talk about. But I think that's a lovely message to leave this on. Karly, thank you so much for joining me today. I love your work. I love what you do. We'll put your links to your Instagram and your website and everything below the episode so people can find you if they've got questions, if they want to reach out, if they want to continue the conversation with you. But thank you so much for giving your time today and joining me, because I just think it's a really important message, I think, for people to hear and to know that this is an option for them, I think. And I hope that that's what this episode does, is just really show people that you can make small changes and you can live in that intention and in that purpose and find the right way forward for you.
Thank you so much for having me. I've absolutely loved this conversation.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Good Health Podcast. Do share the episode with anyone you think it may benefit, and help us to spread the word on all things health and wellness by rating, liking, or subscribing to the podcast. If you want more, you can listen to more episodes on your favourite podcast app, or sign up to my newsletter for my favourite tips, tricks, health advice, brands, recipes, and more at nicolegoodhealth.com/newsletter. Have a lovely week. Don't forget to hit subscribe, and I'll see you on the next episode of the Good Health Podcast.